Stormtroopers are the faceless soldiers of the Galactic Empire and the First Order. You may think that they're just dumb grunts in weird masks, but there's a lot more going on with them than meets the eye. In fact, there's quite a lot of rules these soldiers have to follow. They may not always have the best aim, but the life of a stormtrooper is a difficult one. Let's break down some of the crazy rules these troopers have to follow just to keep their jobs.
Only Imperial Stormtroopers are so precise.
Part of what makes stormtroopers scary, at least on paper, is the idea that they are faceless goons doing the bidding of a tyrannical leader. And when we say faceless, we really mean faceless, as the Empire and the First Order that followed were incredibly strict about stormtroopers keeping their helmets on at all times. But it wasn't just their faces these recruits had to surrender to a higher power. Unlike the clones that made up the Grand Army of the Republic, the Empire quickly phased those out and began with raw recruits and forced conscriptions. But even though their soldiers weren't clones, they didn't have any identity and had to give up their names. Many stormtroopers within the Empire were given designation numbers like TK421 and TK571, and the First Order used designations like FN2187. The troopers were conditioned to abandon the person they were before and to become a cog in the machine. With all that in mind, we do have to wonder what stormtroopers do with their days off. Those who are familiar with the United States Marines, directly or indirectly, will perhaps be familiar with their famous motto, "Leave no man behind." It's a valiant effort that's both noble and heroic. The Empire and First Order do not share this ideology. In fact, it's kind of the exact opposite. This particular rule comes courtesy of Grand Moff Tarkin himself, the man who was holding Vader's leash during the first film. Tarkin was cold, calculating, and ruthless, and applied his own ideologies and training to the Empire's vision. During an interview after he became Grand Moff, Tarkin gave a statement about the expectations of the Imperial citizens, especially those in the military, and implied there would be serious consequences for those who didn't follow the rules. The media dubbed this statement the Tarkin Doctrine, and the words became gospel of sort for the entire Stormtrooper Corps, as well as those who wished to live peacefully under Imperial flags. Due to propaganda and harsh training, the troopers became fiercely loyal to the Empire and Palpatine. They are thus conditioned to believe that getting a blaster in the face is a better result than retreating and failing the Emperor. Continuing forward from the idea that the Empire and First Order force their troopers into battle without the possibility of retreating to save their own skins, the coldness of Imperial tactics extends to more than just not allowing their soldiers to pull back. It applies to the worth of the soldiers themselves. Above all else, the mission is what comes first, and not the well-being of one's fellow soldier. If a soldier should get injured on the battlefield, stormtroopers are taught to leave them there suffering and pain and to continue pushing forward. That helps explain why we've never seen a stormtrooper act as a medic in the Star Wars universe. They don't exist at this point because the Empire doesn't see the point in training somebody in first aid when their doctrine states the injured troopers should be left behind. In case you didn't know, the Empire and the First Order are really xenophobic and have a certain hatred towards the alien species that inhabit the galaxy far, far away. They are particularly cruel to these aliens and see themselves as superior to them in any way. While using aliens as an asset is sometimes required, such as the bounty hunters tasked with finding the Millennium Falcon in The Empire Strikes Back, the Empire still regarded them as scum despite their skill set. When it comes to actually hiring for the Stormtrooper Corps, the Empire adopts a very strict humans-only policy. With the Emperor being basically a space racist, he naturally made sure his empire was full of pure subjects. Here's a fun little fact about Stormtrooper armor. It's not just bits of plastic designed to look imposing. There's actually vast amounts of technology embedded into the armor, including a heads-up display and an internal temperature setting to prevent overheating or freezing. There's just one catch. They're not actually allowed to adjust the temperature of their own suits unless command says that they can. Picture this, you're at work in front of your computer and it's absolutely roasting inside the building. You have a nice big fan on your desk that can remedy the situation, but your boss has forbidden you to turn the fan on because reasons. That's basically what it's like for a stormtrooper. The only difference is that if a stormtrooper adjusts their own internal temperature without permission, the consequences may be dire and punishable. The reason for this is a continued effort to try to dehumanize their soldiers. By adapting to a standardized norm, the troopers will begin to lose their free will and control, and have to conform to the greater will of the Imperial High Command. They're not individuals, simply cogs in the machine, and they must abide by the laws of said machine or face consequences. Do you know what else stormtroopers don't get to do? Click that subscribe button and the bell so they can get more videos like this every single day. Also, be sure to go into your phone settings and turn on notifications if you're watching this on mobile. This rule, which really raises some questions about sanitation and bathroom breaks, applies to both Stormtroopers in the Galactic Empire as well as their First Order successors. The rule? They must always be in full armor, unless given express permission that they can remove it. Case in point, when Trooper FN2187 removed his helmet early on in The Force Awakens. He was kinda maybe going through an identity crisis at the time, but Captain Phasma really didn't care about any of that. In fact, all she cared about was conformity and obeying the rules, something Finn was not doing at the time. By simply taking off his helmet, he was ordered to her division at once and was subject to be reconditioned. The idea goes back to the dehumanization of the Stormtrooper. Citizens and enemies aren't meant to see a trooper and think of them as a person. They're supposed to be feared, and that helped when intimidating citizens of a planet under Imperial control. Nothing like asking for documentation from a monster behind a mask. By revealing that they're simply human, the spell that the Empire and the First Order have conjured would have been broken. By enforcing this on their soldiers, a psychological effect begins to set in, and the trooper ends up becoming the armor, surrendering their identity to the white outfits. So far, we've been talking about the vanilla Stormtroopers found in the First Order and Galactic Empire. But as we know, there are dozens of different varieties of troopers out there, all with different purposes and skills. For the most part, all the troopers are on the same level of training, but are given different designations and roles. For instance, there's not much difference between a Stormtrooper and a Sand Trooper aside from the functionality of their armor. One of the most interesting and lethal troopers out there are the Death Troopers. Making their debut in Rogue One and appearing in Rebels and The Mandalorian, the Death Troopers are basically like the Navy SEALs of Stormtroopers. They're drafted from the regular Trooper Corps and made up of the best of the best. From there, the Death Troopers are given more advanced training to make them the elite unit that they are. But that's not the only thing the Empire gives them. In a twist that comes straight out of Marvel, the Empire actually gives the Death Troopers classified surgical enhancements, resulting in soldiers that can be considered beyond human. So not only do the Stormtroopers have to be conditioned to become less than human, but the Death Troopers literally achieve a state of being, thanks to surgery, something that may not be labeled as human. When one thinks of combat training, one usually thinks of target practice, some sparring, and lots of study. That ideology doesn't really fit in with the Empire, and it most certainly doesn't apply to the First Order. One may consider the training element of the Stormtrooper Corps even more difficult than being an actual Stormtrooper. In reality, any given Stormtrooper isn't off fighting grand battles every day. Most of the time it's patrols and guard duty, as well as detaining. But training, it's rough, brutal, and daily. Thankfully for Imperial cadets, this was less of an issue as they opted for a more uniform training regimen, utilized scenarios that taught survival of the fittest. But during the time of the First Order, this idea changed with the Huxes in charge, alongside Captain Phasma and Cardinal. They opted for a more improvised training program, which would teach the troopers to think on their feet. This improvisation method would result in many trooper cadets losing their lives as they didn't always know what to expect, and the First Order encouraged ruthlessness. You know, it's one thing to teach a soldier fighting skills and tactics with the help of hands-on training and lessons, but it's another one entirely to make them believe in the cause that they're fighting for. Many troopers come from different worlds and may only be looking for a job. At least, that may have been the case for the Empire. For the First Order, things were a little bit different. Training for their First Order cadets started even younger than those of the Galactic Empire, and thus, they had to condition the young minds to believe in the cause that they were fighting for. To help instill this philosophy in their minds, Hux and Phasma would play recorded messages in their minds during their sleep, effectively brainwashing them to their cause. In due time, the First Order Stormtroopers would essentially be mindless, soulless fighting machines, programmed rather than taught to fight in the name of their masters. We mentioned that the First Order brainwashed their soldiers in order to get them to believe in their cause without any doubt. But where exactly did all of these troopers come from? Unlike the Galactic Empire, who operated on a volunteer or conscription operation, for the most part, the First Order actually kidnapped children from planets across the galaxy to bolster their ranks. The idea was that a young mind was more malleable than the mind of an adult or teenager, and that the brainwashing techniques used to program the soldier would be more effective on the minds of a child. Since they couldn't conscript soldiers, as the First Order was in hiding until the events of The Force Awakens, they had to steal their soldiers over the many years they operated in secret. Take that and couple it with everything else that we know about the First Order, and they may, in fact, be more twisted and dangerous than the Empire ever was. So that sums up all the insane rules the various stormtroopers have to follow. What do you think is the most strict law that they have to abide by, and do you think these laws have made better or worse troopers in the end? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stuff like this every single day. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.